Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. Please visit our website, cscatlanta.org, for a complete list of live and recorded events. If this is your first time participating, we invite you to complete a new attendee form to stay connected to all future programs.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this nutrition program. This is Emily Brown, the Program Director at Cancer Support Community Atlanta. Kristin does these programs for us every month on the third Tuesday of the month at noon, so please feel free to join us again next month. And without further ado, Kristin, I will go ahead and let you get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily, and hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on this super rainy day here in Atlanta. So like Emily said, we do these presentations once a month on the third Tuesday at noon. So we're always here to help with that. I do like to give a disclaimer up front that these presentations are more generic. They're obviously geared more towards cancer patients or survivors. However, if you're looking for care or you have very specific questions about you and your medical history, here at Northside, we do have dietitians on staff that pretty much service all of our cancer clinics that are around the Northside Hospital Cancer Institute. So we range all the way up from Blue Ridge, Blairsville, all the way down to Macon as far as our coverage goes. And then if you are part of another health system like Emory or Piedmont, there are also dietitians that can do more individualized one-on-one care for you. So with that being said, today our topic is a big one, and sense of macronutrients. So I did break this down into a two-part series. So part one is today, and we're going to go over carbohydrates. And then next month's topic is going to be part two, and that's going to focus more on proteins and fats. So stay tuned for more details, but we're going to jump right into carbohydrates. So just to give us a little bit of a background, macronutrients, some of these are very popular terms that if you do any kind of internet surfing that you might run across. And then there are a lot of diets, obviously, that use different words that you're going to hear today as buzzwords to help promote what they are trying to get you to do. So macronutrients tends to be one of those. So some people call it counting your macros, but macronutrients are basically the nutritive components of food that our body uses for energy that helps us to maintain our body structure and our systems. So the three macronutrients that we have are carbohydrates, fat, and protein. So like I said earlier, we're just going to focus mostly on carbohydrates today. It is hard to talk about just carbohydrates on their own. So there's a little fat and protein sprinkled in, of course, but today the main focus is going to be on carbohydrates. And just to make this blanket statement out there, no healthy diet should ever exclusively restrict any macronutrient. So there is a reason why we are supposed to be eating them. They provide a lot of nutrition for us. So anything that tells you to eliminate or get rid of, or you can only have, a bite of it, is probably not in your best interest for the long term. And why dietitians get so passionate for carbohydrates, and especially with our cancer patients, this is a plate and a diet that is recommended by the American Institute for Cancer Research. They call it the New American Plate. This takes all of their recommendations, all of the research that they scour over from the US and across the globe. They, when I say they, the American Institute for Cancer Research, or the AICR, they publish results of things that we can do to help lower our risk of cancer and to lower our risk of cancer recurrence from happening. So these are the recommendations that they make as far as lifestyle choices go that can help to improve your overall health, reduce your risk of cancer, reduce your risk of diabetes, and reduce your risk of heart disease. So if you look at this plate closely, you will see in this little green bubble, it says 2/3 or more of your plate should be vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans. All of those are carbohydrate foods. So when people tell me they go out on a low carb diet or they're not eating carbohydrates, in my mind, that just deletes 2/3 of this plate and leaves only the little sad piece of chicken down there. So, you know, we really want to hone in on what carbohydrates are, what they do for our bodies, and how to choose ones that may be better for you over ones that aren't really providing you any nutrition. So again, this plate, 2/3 or more of it is coming from carbohydrates. That's why this is an entire presentation that takes an hour today. And then 1/3 or less is actually coming from an animal protein or a protein source here. So just a quick review of this New American plate. If you've been with me for any other presentations, you have probably seen this plate before and you're like, Kristin, stop sharing it. But really, it's one of the most important tools that we have. So I will keep sharing it because I do find it to be super helpful. So the AICR recommends that we focus on foods that are rich in fiber, vitamins, and phytonutrients to help protect us against cancer, or again, against cancer recurrence. And then it also includes that modest 3 to 4 ounce serving of meat, which could be fish, poultry, red meat. It can also be plant-based proteins if you want to get a little nitpicky about it. A variety of food is going to be very important. So you can see all the different colors and textures and stuff on this plate here. They promote that you should do at least 2 kinds of vegetables on your plate, and then also including that healthy serving of a tasty whole grain. So again, a lot of people, not everyone, when they think about weight loss or they think about health, they quickly think about cutting carbohydrates. So it's not always about cutting the amount of carbohydrate, it's types of carbohydrates that you're eating and making sure you're including these whole grains and more healthy carbohydrate options versus just restricting yourself and not having any carbohydrates whatsoever. So this is another plate that you'll see me use a lot. And we'll go back and reference this towards the end of the presentation. But this is a plate that's very similar to the plate on the other slide that you can use as a way to make your meal planning more simple. So it's a lot easier for you to follow these recommendations and think about these foods that we're going to talk about today and how they might fit on your plate. So I wanted to go ahead and put it into context to show you how much of your food and your meals are actually going to be coming from carbohydrates. So if you look over on this plate, I just like to use it a little bit more because it kind of divides it up, and I'm a visual learner. So you'll see, again, about 1/4 of your plate is going to be protein of some kind. We'll talk about that next month. Another 1/4 is going to come from grains or a starchy product of some kind, and we'll go through what those are. And then 1/2 of the plate's going to be a non-starchy vegetable. So even though it's a non-starchy vegetable, it's still considered a carbohydrate because it does contain fiber and a little bit of starch, not a lot. That's why they call it a non-starchy, but mostly it's composed of fiber, and fiber is going to be very helpful for a lot of reasons that we're going to go into here in a little bit. And then you've also got your little 1/2 cup of fruit off to the side, and that is also going to be filled with fiber there. So again, this is just an easy way to kind of visualize your meals, your snacks, and how they should look if you're eating more of a balanced meal at each of your eating sessions throughout the day. So I will take a small little break here just to say, you know, everybody's at a different place in their nutrition journey. So if you're actively going through treatment, some of this stuff may not make sense for you if you're having a lot of side effects from your chemotherapy, or if you had to go through bowel surgeries as part of your cancer treatment. So if some of this is like, oh, I don't think I can do that, that's okay. That's where you might want to meet with the dietitian one-on-one to get that more individualized care. But in general, if you're in survivorship or you're helping your family to eat healthy, we're shooting for about 3 meals per day, maybe 3 and a snack. You don't always have to do those 5 to 6 smaller meals throughout the day. Shooting for those 3 is a great goal. And then also making sure that your meals have enough food in them to make sure that you're not getting, you know, ravenously hungry by your next meal. So you shouldn't be hangry by the time lunch comes around. And if you are, then we might need to look at what you're eating for breakfast, because you should be able to go 4 to 5 hours in between meals without starving yourself and just devouring whatever your next meal is without thinking. So those are just some things to think about too while we go through this today. All right, so carbohydrates, or AKA carbs, I'll use these terms interchangeably throughout the presentation because Carbohydrates is a mouthful and carbs is what we normally hear. So they are the primary energy source that our body prefers, and our body turns carbohydrates into glucose or blood sugar, and that is what gives us energy to function. So I usually tell people these are like gas for your car. If you don't have any gas in your car is. So our bodies love glucose so much that they have the ability to turn fat and protein into blood sugar. That's how important. Brain runs off of blood sugar or glucose. Those are kind of interchangeable there for the purpose of this presentation. And so our bodies have the ability, if you are not eating carbohydrate foods, that it can make carbohydrate food, or it can make its own glucose to be able to keep functioning and provide your body the energy that it needs. So when we do that, it tends to weaken our immune systems. That's a big topic right now. Because you're putting extra stress on your body and you're actually taking maybe other nutrients that should be doing other things. You know, fats do their own thing, protein does its own thing. And so your body's having to say, whoa, let me try to figure out how to make my own glucose. So as being so important for our primary energy source, that is the main reason why carbohydrates are so important. There are 3 types of carbohydrates. So there are fiber, starches, and sugars. And on your nutrition facts label, if you're used to reading that, or if you're not, I've got one over here on the right. They all should be looking like this now. So this is the new food label. It's launched over the last several years. I think they might have another year to kind of convert, but most of the food labels I see at the grocery store now look like this, where it's got more bolded information. But in this red box down here, you have total carbohydrates. So the total carbohydrates is a combination of all 3 of those types of carbohydrates. So lucky for us, they go ahead and break down fiber and also sugars for us. So there's total sugars, and then there's also added sugars. And we have a section on this towards a little later in the presentation. But sometimes there are sugars that are naturally occurring, and sometimes the sugars are added to the product. So that's how they have them broken out there. And then anything that's in the remaining total carbohydrates is going to be starches. So they don't break out starches. It's mostly just the fiber and the total sugars, and then the added sugars there. So it's very nicely broken down. I know that most of our, fruits and vegetables don't come with a food label, and that's okay. But if you're buying packaged products, most of them will have a food label on here. So now you know that the total carbohydrates have the fiber, the starches, and the sugars all included in that line. All right, so carbohydrate containing foods. So we've got fiber, and you'll see that some of these overlap the next one. So fiber, your beans, legumes, fruits, nuts and seeds, whole grains, and vegetables. Those all contain fiber. And then starch, so again, these overlap a lot with the fiber, your beans, legumes, fruits, whole grains, and vegetables. So those are going to be complex carbohydrates there. You've got more than one thing going on. We're going to talk a little bit more about that soon. And then you've got sugars. So some of them are occurring, and those are things like milk, so lactose and milk. And then also your fresh fruits have naturally occurring sugars. And then there's also added sugars. And those are things that we tend to add to different foods that we're eating or drinking. So that's anything from sweets, canned fruit, juice, soda, candy bars, ice cream. The list goes on and on. There's actually, we tend to think about just sweet foods when we think about added sugars or sugar, but actually a lot of like spaghetti sauce, salad dressings, a lot of savory foods also contain added sugars in them. So that's why it's important to start looking at those food labels to see how many added sugars you are consuming, because they are hidden. All right, so when we eat carbohydrates, what happens in our body? So the processing and the digesting of what goes down. When you eat carbohydrates, your digestive system breaks down the food, in your stomach, and it goes into your intestines, and then it gets absorbed into our bloodstream as glucose or as blood sugar. So once it's absorbed into our bloodstream, that is where, if you've ever cared for somebody with diabetes or you have diabetes, that's where your blood sugar numbers come from. So it's what's floating around in your blood sugar. And then once it's into the bloodstream, then it can actually enter into your cells all over the place. And that is going to be used as energy to help fuel your body and make sure that the cell is able to do what it needs to do, no matter what its job is. And then the amount and the type of carbohydrates that you're eating is going to affect your blood sugar. And there are several things that can affect your blood sugar, so we're going to be on this slide and the next slide for a little bit. But consuming a lot of carbohydrates can raise your blood sugar levels, and then not consuming enough can actually cause low blood sugar levels. So if you look over here to the right, I've got this little roller coaster going on. So this is more of like balancing your blood sugar. So what we want is this nice little squiggly line at the bottom. So when you eat something, you're naturally going to have a rise in your blood sugar. That's normal. And until your body is able to absorb it into your cells, it's going to stay a little bit high in your bloodstream. So once you have eaten, your body is going to release insulin. And the insulin is what helps your body cells to absorb the sugar out of your blood to be able to use it. So if you notice on the roller coaster, we do not want our blood sugars looking like this. So if you have something, let's just say a Coke, a regular soda of sugar. If you just drink that by itself, you're going to see this big spike. Climb up that roller coaster real fast. Your body's going to release insulin because it needs to get that blood sugar out of your bloodstream. And so that's what's curve, that initial crash. So this is what we would call like a blood sugar spike, where you had something that was high in sugar or high in carbohydrate. And so your blood sugar shot up, and then insulin was released. And so it's trying to get it as much into your cells to bring your blood sugar back to a normal level. And this is whether you have diabetes or not. This is the process for everybody. So then it dives. So then you've got that spike down. And so you might notice after you have something that's more sugary or sweet, that you might feel a burst of energy, and then you feel a crash or you feel sluggish. So maybe you found a donut in the break room after lunch in the afternoon, and you're like, oh, I need to pick me up. And so it picks you up, but then like 30 minutes later, you start to crash again. And that's because your body has released that insulin, and it's brought all that sugar into your cells, or it's taken it back to your liver to store it. And your body's like a little bit panicked because you're like, it was so high and now it's back to normal, or it's low. We need to eat again because I'm on this roller coaster. So I hope that makes sense. It's a very complicated topic, so I was trying to do my best to like bring it down a little bit. I think the roller coaster is perfect. We want to try to have, you know, low rises versus spikes when we eat. And we're going to talk about what causes those spikes a little bit further on. I just wanted to give you a little context here on what it might look like when we talk about your blood sugar spiking, or when your blood sugar is more stabilized. All right, so this is just the second part to that, where it's talking about the insulin. So when your blood sugar is elevated, your body will produce the insulin to help bring it into your cells. So it is a hormone, and it's made by our pancreas. So its first job is to help get the sugar into your cells so it can be used as energy. And then if your cells have enough energy and there's still leftover blood sugar to help bring it back down to a normal level in your bloodstream, then the insulin will take it to your liver. Or your liver will store it to be used for later. So it can be stored as glycogen in our muscles, but it can also be stored as fat cells. So if we have enough stores, the only place for it really to go is to make more fat cells, or to store it in fat cells, which is really what leads to becoming overweight or obese. So there was a time when people thought that eating fat made you fat. However, it's really this excess was floating around that needs to be stored somewhere. And so that tends to be stored as fat cells, which can again lead to being overweight, lead to being obese. And then that increases our risk of cancer. It increases our risk for diabetes and also heart disease. So these are all the reasons why we want to try to just really level out the blood sugar so they're much more even. Again, you're going to have little hills at the very least, because you are going to be eating, and we need this nutrition to be able to function. We just want to try to prevent having those big spikes and those crashes. The other thing with those big crashes, that tends to be where our cravings come from too. So if you have this wild roller coaster, that can make you crave certain foods that maybe you wouldn't normally crave. And I hear this a lot from people, you know, maybe they went on vacation and they were eating very abnormally for their normal behavior, and they're eating sweets at every meal just because they were on vacation. And so when they come back home, they're like, why do I keep craving all of these sweets and stuff? And part of that could be because the blood sugars were just on such a roller coaster during that time. And it takes time for our body to kind of bounce back and to acclimate back into the normal routine. Okay, so simple versus complex carbohydrates. This will take us into the rest of our presentation. So carbohydrates are digested very quickly, and they're more likely to cause those spikes in our blood sugar. So you can see this nice milkshake down here at the bottom, topped with a donut, topped with whipped cream. Those are going to be very simple carbohydrates that are going to enter your bloodstream very quickly and can cause those spikes that have to cause that chain reaction of that little roller coaster that we saw. So again, that can increase your weight and your risk for the diabetes, heart disease, high cholesterol, and cancer. And then you've got your complex carbohydrates, which are less likely to cause a spike in your blood sugar because it takes longer to digest them in your stomach and also digest them and process them through your intestines. So these carbohydrates, they also contain vitamins, minerals, and fiber that our body needs. So they're not just like one little nutrient hanging out there. They're the whole package. So they're providing your body with a lot of nutrients that we need to help everything keep functioning, where simple carbs tend to not have any of these extra nutrients. They're just calories, like, you know, like we call them empty calories. They're providing energy, but no actual other nutrients to help that are beneficial to your body. All right, so we're going to start with the good stuff, complex carbs. So fiber is amazing, and fiber is found mostly in your fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. The benefits of fiber are tremendous. They help to normalize your bowel movements, so they can help if you're constipated or even if you have diarrhea. They help promote and maintain bowel health. So a couple months ago, Blair did a presentation on gut health, and a lot of our prebiotics, so the good food for our good bacteria in our gut, actually come from fiber. It helps to lower your cholesterol levels. It helps to control your blood sugar levels. So fiber is harder to digest, so it takes more time, so it prevents those spikes from happening. And then it also aids in achieving a healthy weight. So when we eat foods that contain, one, it slows down the digestion, so you feel fuller longer, which is great. And then it also, these foods tend to be lower in calories just naturally. And so you're eating more fiber, but you don't have to eat as many calories to stay full. So that's really how it helps to achieve that healthy weight. And then our fiber recommendations, if you're male, it's anywhere from 30 to 38 grams of fiber per day. And then if you're female, it's 21 to 25 grams of fiber per day. Sometimes I'll see recommendations for 25 to 30 grams of fiber for females, but 21 to 25 is fine. The average American gets about 10 to 15 grams of fiber. So this is an excellent place to start if you're not sure, am I eating a healthy diet? What could I do to optimize my nutrition? Where might I be lacking? Room for improvement. Usually fiber is high up on the list of places that you could focus to help improve your overall lifestyle. So if you think about these recommendations, and if you think about eating 3 to 4 times per day, because you're having 3 meals or maybe 3 meals and a snack, or maybe you have to eat 5 or 6 meals per day, that's fine too, but divide the amount of fiber that you need by that number. So if you're doing 25 grams of fiber per day and you're sticking to 3 meals a day, you have to have anywhere from 5 to 15 grams of fiber to be able to hit this by the end of the day. So I say this, and I am very excited for this topic because in June, I was diagnosed with high cholesterol, devastating as a dietitian, but something we can totally focus on. And I started to look at my fiber intake, and it was not as great as it could have been. And so for the last 3 months, I have done nothing but focus on making sure that at every meal I have fiber. And at first it was a little bit difficult because I was like, oh, what could I add to make sure that I have some kind of fiber? And I've been shooting to get that 5 to 15 grams per meal, and it's been very eye-opening. So it was a very cool place for me to start, just to help tweak things. So I'm pretty passionate about fiber right now. Can't tell. So there are some different types of fiber, and the type isn't as important as just having a variety. So you don't have to necessarily lean on one type of fiber over the other. And a lot of the foods that contain fiber contain a little bit of both. So it's not a huge deal for you to focus on like, oh, am I getting enough soluble fiber, or am I getting enough insoluble fiber? You know, really just, am I getting enough fiber? And you're probably going to level out by the end of the day with what you need. So soluble fiber is pretty cool. It dissolves in water and it forms this gel-like material. And so the best example that I have of this would be your chia seeds. I don't know if anybody's experimented with chia seeds, but they're these little black seeds. And if you add them to water, you'll see like this really neat gel-like outline, I guess. So a lot of people like to make chia seed pudding, and you'll see it. You'll see they just go in as little hard seeds, but then after a few minutes or an hour, you can start seeing that gel form on the outside. So this really helps to clean out our colon and our intestines, and get some of the bad cholesterol out of our bloodstream. And also it helps us to control our glucose levels, because again, it's very difficult. Most fiber can't be digested, so it helps to slow down the digestion process, which helps to maintain those glucose levels there. But soluble fiber is found in a lot of different things. So oats or oatmeal. A lot of people like to have oatmeal if they're trying to lower their cholesterol, and that would be part of the reason. Peas, beans, apples, citrus fruits, carrots, barley, psyllium, and I threw chia seeds on there. This is not an all-inclusive list. There are other things that also contain soluble fiber, but these are pretty good sources here. And then the other type of fiber would be your insoluble fiber. So this is the fiber that really has a hard time getting broken down. So it promotes movement of the material through your GI system, and it increases the stool bulk. So for those that are struggling with constipation, or you maybe have irregular bowel movements, adding in more insoluble fiber can help with that. And those are going to be found in any whole wheat flours. So think about your whole wheat breads, whole wheat tortillas, whole wheat pastas, wheat bran, nuts, beans, and vegetables. And I do have a list of all these things a little bit later too. All right, so next up would be your starches. So your starches are also a complex carbohydrate. So they have a big chemical structure to them that is just harder for our body to break down. So that again is going to sugar control, which is great. And they also provide those vitamins and minerals, or phytonutrients, that help with protecting us from cancer. And they're found in beans and legumes, so stuff like your black beans, lentils, chickpeas, fruits, berries, apples, melons. Again, this is not all inclusive. This is just to give you some ideas. Whole grain products, so brown rice, oatmeal, vegetables. So you will often hear starchy vegetables versus non-starchy vegetables. So your starchy vegetables are your corn, lima beans, peas, potatoes. So again, if you have ever cared for somebody with diabetes, or you have diabetes yourself, they're usually pretty cautious about having these foods, just because of the starchy content there. But the benefits of the starch is that it will, again, help control our blood sugar levels because they're the complex carbohydrate. And then they can also help aid in achieving a healthy weight because they're going to make you feel full for longer. And that will allow you to go a little bit longer between your meals and to not, you know, feel so hungry you have to shove everything in your mouth and overeat, which is great. So simple carbs. And usually starchy carbs are the ones that people start to cut out or they eliminate out of their diet when they're looking to lose weight. So it is important that we keep sorry, my automatic timer on my light went off. It is important to keep including them, but maybe you eat a little bit less of them, or you really monitor your portion size of them. So usually a portion would be about a half cup, maybe up to a full cup. So if weight loss is something that you're interested, instead of cutting these things out altogether, looking at how much you're eating currently, and if you need to cut down on the number of servings or make your servings smaller, would be where I would start. And then you also have to realize that, you know, lose all of the weight you want to lose in a month. It's a longer process. And if you give yourself, you know, a year, 2 years to really incorporate this into a lifestyle, then it becomes a lot easier to maintain your weight without having to sacrifice food or falling off the wagon again because you had a cheat meal that turned into a month of not eating well. You know, just focusing on making these small adjustments gets us a lot farther in the long run. All right, simple carbs, sugar. So our sugars are a very simple carbohydrate. Our body breaks down simple carbs very quickly, and this causes our blood sugars to rise and then drop quickly. So you saw that with the roller coaster at the beginning. So again, you might feel that quick burst of energy after having some of these foods or beverages, and then you're going to feel that feeling tired or sluggish, kind of that down part of the roller coaster there. So there are two types of sugars. There's naturally occurring sugars that's going to be found in your milk and your fresh fruits, and then there's also the added sugars. So added sugars are found in your sweet foods, canned fruit, juice, sodas, etc. And all sugars are processed the same. The body cannot tell the difference between a natural sugar or an added sugar. This one always trips people up a little bit, but foods with natural sugars also tend to provide vitamins, minerals, and some fiber. So if you think about your fresh fruits, those are going to have fiber, there's vitamins, there's minerals in there, and that makes it a better option than maybe just having some table sugar. Even milk has its own natural sugar, but it also provides some protein during that. And then if you're drinking, you know, a 2% or even a full fat milk, it's going to have fat in it as well. So because it's combined with other things, you're not going to see quite the spike that you would if you were just having a glass of juice or a regular soda. So added sugars, we'll talk about this for a little bit, but sugar goes by many names. So you definitely have to check the food label ingredients list. So that's usually located underneath or off to the side of the actual food label that you see on the package. But agave nectar, cane syrup, corn syrup, dextrose, fructose, sucrose, honey, molasses, or just sugar are some of the common names that you might see on a food label that are going to be added sugars. So, you know, I do understand things like honey or agave nectar are, again, more naturally occurring. They may have other nutrients in them, but they're still going to be considered added sugars because they're not really containing any, you know, fiber or anything that's going to help slow down your body processing them. So we do want to focus on limiting added sugars. Notice I didn't say avoiding, but limiting added sugars is going to be essential and key to help keeping your blood sugars level in a healthy range. So the American Heart Association recommends no more than 25 grams per day of added sugar for women and no more than 36 grams per day of added sugar for men. So being cautious, they are added to a lot of different foods, either by yourself, like you adding sugar to your coffee or your tea. You know, that's perfectly fine as long as you know how much is going in there and you're in control of it. So 4 grams of added sugar is about a teaspoon of sugar. So if you add a teaspoon of sugar, you're already at 4 grams of added sugar for the day. But where we really get in trouble is when the food manufacturers add sugar to processed and prepared foods that you might not know about. Like I said, you know, sometimes savory foods. I mean, I've seen crackers, all kinds of stuff that have added sugars in them to help keep them shelf stable or to taste better. I'm not sure, but 75% of our packaged foods have added sugars to them. So now the new food label requires that they actually tell you how much added sugar is going to be what you're eating. So just to put this in context, the average American eats about 22 teaspoons of sugar per day. That's 88 grams. So if you're a female and you're supposed to be sticking to the 25 grams per day or the 36 grams per day, and the average person is having 88, you're getting double, triple, quadruple the amount of sugar just in added sugars, which can add up to about 130 pounds of added sugar per year. Imagine sitting around a pile of 130 pounds of sugar that you consumed throughout the year, because they're hidden in a lot of our foods. So definitely checking the food labels and making sure that we're choosing foods that either don't contain added sugars, or that you know how much you're getting in, and trying to stick to that 25 grams or the 36 grams. Is anybody shocked by this? I was shocked.
Yeah. I have a funny side note. I tried to make these muffins this weekend that were sweetened naturally by blueberries and bananas for my daughter, and she very promptly told me that they were disgusting. So probably because it did not have the, multiple cups of sugar like other muffins that I would have made before.
Very true. Very true. And I saw a really nice post on Instagram this week that said not every food that we make needs to be a healthy food. So it's better maybe to have a regular muffin every once in a while that is normal, or normal recipe that we would use, versus trying to make it into a healthy food and just choosing healthier foods in general. So that's a very good point. All right, so what can you do now as it relates to carbohydrates? So focusing on those healthy, complex carbohydrates that are found in your fruits, your vegetables, your whole grains, and legumes, which are foods that also appear to help fight cancer best. So either fighting cancer, preventing cancer, or reducing your risk for cancer recurrence. These foods are going to be important to help support you and your health throughout your whole life. Avoiding naked carbohydrates, or that's also known as just having carbohydrates by themselves. So if you are going to sit down and have a piece of fruit, this is very popular here in the South in the summer, is I'm just going to have fruit for a snack. Well, instead of just having fruit for a snack, think about adding some kind of a protein or a healthy fat, or both. That way you feel full longer. You don't have quite that spike in blood sugar like you would if you were just eating the fruit on its own. And it might not be the same giant spike as you would if you sat down and had a soda, but you're still going to see more of a spike than if you actually paired it with something. So good examples would be like a banana with peanut butter, or you can peanut butter, or you can do little cheese cubes or a handful of nuts. You can do Greek yogurt, and just make sure that you those added sugars. That's another food that gets a lot of added sugars to it. So you can find, the yogurt aisle is crazy at the grocery store now. So you just have to take time to research foods that you actually like and see which options are going to be better and fit better into your budget and your taste palette. So you just have to do a little bit of investigating. And that's what I found when I started increasing all of this fiber. I had to, really sit down and be like, okay, my breakfast only has like 3 grams of fiber. What can I do to help add more fiber? And so I bought chia seeds, and I like to make smoothies in the morning. And so I added chia seeds. And then I was using a whole frozen banana, and I cut the banana in half, and I added berries. And now my smoothie in the morning is up to 11 grams of fiber. It's amazing. I stay full all the way until lunch. So just those small little tweaks was able to help me get up to a higher fiber already straight out of the gate at my breakfast meal. So it's really up to you. And then if you want to work with a dietitian one-on-one to try to figure out some of those things that you can tweak to increase the fiber and the healthy complex carbohydrates. And I will say that it's very hard to reach your fiber goals if you're not including whole grains and beans or legumes into your diet. If you're only focusing on fruits and vegetables, it takes a lot of chewing and a lot of eating to get up to that fiber goal. So don't be afraid of whole grains. Again, just check how much fiber are in the ones that you're choosing to eat and what the actual portion size is, and maybe sticking to just 1 serving at lunch and 1 serving at dinner if you lose weight. and feel like you need to cut down somewhere. All right. So the last thing you can do here is join us next month for part 2 of this series on protein and fat, so you can get the whole picture. So carbohydrates are just one small piece of the pie here. So I told you we would come back to this list here, and this is a handout that Emily has made available to you. So the front side has this plate on it, and then the back side has this list of food. And so, yes, I use this a lot, and I'm sorry if you keep coming here and, you know, have to look at it, but just consistency and nutrition are two of the best things that you can do. You don't have to do yo-yo dieting or fad diets. It's really about adjusting to just a healthier lifestyle. Foods here can definitely be a help for that. So I think this is a great tool. But if you're looking at building your meals to be more balanced, and if you're only going to do 3 meals per day or maybe 4 meals, you really, again, your fiber has to be between 5 to 15 grams per meal to be able to reach that goal, 5 to 38 grams, depending on if you're male or female. And when you focus on fiber, you're naturally going to be adding carbohydrates to your diet. So sometimes people are like, oh, is this a low carb diet because you don't have carbohydrates listed here? And it's really not. You're going to have quite a bit of carbohydrates, but they're going to be your healthy, more complex carbohydrates, and you're going to be getting that fiber in that you need. And then your protein for 20 to 30 grams per meal. Protein is our most fulfilling food, I think, that's out there. It's harder to digest and break down, so it just keeps us feeling fuller longer, and it helps protect our muscle mass. And then also healthy fats. So all of these are listed on this handout here. So obviously we're going to talk more next month about the protein and the fat, but this first column here is going to be your starchy grains and also your starchy vegetables. So you basically, you know, you've got a quarter of your plate you need to fill up here. You want to pick one of these foods that you like. There's nothing, you know, there's not one is better than the other. It's just what you're eating that day and how it fits into your life. And again, your taste preferences. So if you want to have a sweet potato at dinner, then that sweet potato, even though it's a vegetable, it's going to be a starchy vegetable. So you're going to put it down here in this grain starch. But if you wanted to have wild rice, then you could use over here. So, you know, whatever tickles your fancy over here, and your portion sizes. So anywhere from a half cup to a full cup can be a serving. And you don't have to stick to just one serving if you're like, oh, I just had a big workout, or I'm going to work out really hard this afternoon. You might need a little bit more just to help fuel your body. So it's okay to, you know, one day it might be a half cup, and the next day you might be hungry and you need a little bit more. So that's okay. And then over in this column under your non-starchy vegetables, this is going to be where a lot of that insoluble fiber is that I mentioned earlier. So if you're looking to increase the amount of bowel movements you're having, or you struggle with constipation, this is a great area to focus in as well when it comes to fiber. And then your fruits, they also have insoluble fiber, but also soluble fiber too. So again, this is where we're hanging out for your fiber. And then also a lot of your nuts and seeds also have fiber, so they're not listed in here, but that might be another avenue that you explore as well. They're usually listed under the healthy fats, but again, they're complex foods. They're not just going to fit into one little box, even though I would love for everything to fit in a box. You know, they're complex, they're complicated, which means it's harder for your body to digest, and they provide great nutrition. So in summary, carbohydrates, again, are a primary energy source for our bodies to function. So you should not have to eliminate them to appease any specific kind of diet. The AICR's current recommendations include that 2/3 of our plates from complex carbohydrates. So vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, fruits, all of that good stuff. Choosing foods that contain fiber foods are going to be your better options, and then limiting your added sugars. And then striving for that balanced meal that includes both carbohydrates, protein, and fats at each meal is really going to help balance your blood sugar as well. So we'll get more into that next month, but You know, by pairing carbohydrates with your protein and fats also helps to slow down digestion, which helps to prevent those spikes in blood sugar. And I think that's all I have. Do we have questions?
All right, yes, we did have 2 questions, and I'm sorry I don't remember the exact slides they were referencing, but one person did ask about sprouts and where they might fall.
Yes, so sprouts are usually in the insoluble, non-starchy vegetable area.
And then flaxseed.
Flaxseed is going to be...
I'm sorry, flax meal.
Black meal.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that comes from flax seeds. So usually flax seeds, you get the most nutrition if they're ground. So hopefully ground flax seeds make ground flax seed meal. But that's going to be under your healthy fats, but it's also falls under your fiber as well. So flaxseed oil, flaxseed is over here. So that is helpful to get more fiber in. You can add it to yogurts. Some people throw it on top of salads. Some people throw it in their smoothies just to help increase the fiber.
All right, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to submit those to the chat box, or you can also unmute yourself and go ahead and ask Kristin. I did have a few people ask me about the handouts for today. I've put them in the chat. If you don't see them there, I think it depends on how you're viewing the program today. Just go ahead and email me, emily@cscatlanta.org. I will be happy to share those with you. We're also going to post them on our website, cscatlanta.org, under nutrition later today, so you'll be able to access this as well. Shirley, you've got your hand raised. Did you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I had a question for her. And I noticed the cheeses. Well, I just wondered about feta cheese. Where would that fall at in there? A hard cheese,
so
or is that
a... Feta cheese is not necessarily considered a hard cheese, I don't think, although I'm not 1000% sure. But it's going to fall under...
She froze, or I froze.
Say you froze?
Somebody froze.
Oh, the feta cheese would be considered like more of a protein and a fat, not a carbohydrate. So we'll talk more about that next month.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Did anyone else have a question? I was going to ask you, Kristin, I think you said chia seeds, adding them to your morning smoothie, but is there any other way that you found that you have enjoy adding fiber to your diet, or any tricks that you've gotten around that?
I did find some crackers that I liked, which are these Wasa crackers, W-A-S-A. And I found them at Walmart. I've seen them at Publix. They should be at most of the grocery stores, but they're usually like a longer kind of cracker. And each cracker, the ones that I got were like a multi-grain whole grain, and it has 35 calories. I mean, it's a pretty big cracker. And then 3 grams of fiber each. So I usually eat 2 of those, like if I make like a chicken salad or a tuna salad and want something to put it on. So that was an easy way to get 6 grams of fiber in there. I've been eating more blueberries. And then I also added that frozen berry. I got the frozen blend at Costco that has raspberries, blueberries, and blackberries. And a cup, I think, has 11 grams of fiber. I only use like a third of a cup to a half cup. And that was pretty much that, and the chia seeds were really what pushed up my fiber in my morning smoothie. And then I've just been focusing more on eating vegetables, making sure I'm using a whole grain. My husband, sometimes he likes, you know, regular white rice and that kind of stuff. So I've just been conscious about making sure that I use something that's not white rice.
Awesome, thank you. I know you said you've shared that American plate so many times, but really it's taken this many times for me to finally be like, okay, my base needs to be a vegetable. Like I need to stop thinking base is a starch, a rice or something. I need to start making half my plate some sort of vegetable. So you might feel
Yeah.
like you're having to say it a lot, but it's finally starting to click.
Well, good. I am glad. And I mean, honestly, I adding the fiber into my meals like I have. And I mean, I've been practicing as a dietitian for at least 12 years. And I don't know why this just clicked to me, but like, I don't really have a lot of cravings. I mean, there might be something, oh, that sounds good today, but it's not like I now. And I used to have those cravings, or I would get so hungry before lunch. And it was most likely because my smoothie in the morning had, I was using other stuff that had more sugar in it. And so it was causing my blood sugars to go up and probably come back down pretty quickly. And so I wasn't able to make it 4 or 5 hours. I was only able to make it like 2 hours before I needed another meal. Making those adjustments have really been helpful with the whole day, which has been great. I'm not like tied to food. So that's been very helpful as well.
Yeah, I always feel like I get the inside track from you on different food marketing techniques. And you've talked about, beware of marketing techniques. Just what you said earlier about how they might substitute honey or agave syrup. And you think, oh, well, so it's healthy because they're not using sugar, but that in fact is still sugar, although it may have other benefits. Beware of those marketing techniques.
Definitely. And I saw a fun thing that said most of the most nutritious, like plant-based items or foods that you should choose probably don't have a marketing claim stuck on them. Like you don't see a tomato at the grocery store. So if it's having to yell about it on the front of the package, you just might want to do a double take on the food label and also the ingredients. It could be very true that it's plant-based or has certain things in it, but what else is in it, and is it the best option for you?
Yes, if it's natural, it probably doesn't have to say that it's natural.
Yeah. So definitely always a struggle, but I'm glad to be here in the right direction.
Kristin, we also had a question about monk fruit as a sweetener.
Yes, so monk fruit, I mean, it's still going to be processed similarly as my understanding. Like it's either going to come as a powder or a kind of like a honey consistency I've seen. So it's still going to be very similar to what honey would be as far as your body processing it. And it might have some nutrients in it that maybe just table sugar doesn't, but at the end of the day, it's probably going to be processed similarly as far as your blood sugars go, or just that added sugars. And you can still have those foods. It's not to say that you have to get rid of them or stay away from them by any means. It's just sticking to that 25 to 36 grams of added sugar per day, and just using them wisely on the foods that you want to use them in.
Another question, I see some red meats under proteins. How often should we eat red meat on a weekly basis? Question mark.
Oh, I feel like I should make you wait until next month so you come back, but I won't. So red meats are going to, the recommendation from the American Institute for Cancer Research has found that less than 8 per week is still considered safe. When you go greater than 18 ounces per week of red meats, and red meats are lamb, pork, and beef, then that can increase your risk for colon cancer. And there are some, this is in terms of cancer. So if you're also considering your heart health, your red meats tend to have more saturated fat in them that can lead to other heart conditions. So, once a week, twice a week is usually going to be okay. Again, this is less than 18 ounces. And if you think about protein serving should be 3 to 4 ounces, that's several times per week. So again, if you're just looking at it from a heart health perspective, either avoiding it or limiting it down to just 1 or 2 times per week might be your best bet. But from a cancer perspective, ounces seems to be safe.
All right. And someone asked about different cooking procedures. Like, can you speak to using an air fryer?
Yes, I do love my air fryer. All right, so here's the trick with an air fryer. You have to be careful because I bought my air fryer buying fried frozen foods just to see what they would taste like in the fryer. But the truth is they were already fried and then I just didn't fry them again. And obviously they tasted great, but not necessarily the healthiest option for you. So if you are cooking, I've seen great like pork chop recipes or like chicken, cook pretty much anything in an air fryer. My coworker just cooked like a salmon fillet the other day and she said it turned out perfect. So those are perfectly fine options for cooking. You just want, again, to be careful and cautious with the foods that you are choosing. You still want to choose these healthier options. I love making vegetables instead of roasting them in the oven because it's so hot out right now in Atlanta. I like to use my air fryer because it's a lot faster. I'm not having to heat it up to 425 degrees and let it stay on for 30 minutes in my oven. The air fryer is very quick and easy, so I usually just toss it in a little bit of olive oil and throw in Brussels sprouts or broccoli. All kinds of stuff can go in there. I'm trying to think of my creative things that I've done. There haven't been many. My coworker does way cooler stuff with her air fryer.
All right, we're almost right at 1 o'clock, so I want to be mindful of your time. Thank you again for this wonderful information. Sorry if we didn't get to your question today, but feel free to email those to me and I will pass them along to Kristin as well. Again, my email is emily@cscatlanta.org. If you wanted a copy of the handout and you don't see it in the chat box, you can also email me as well. Like Kristin said, our topic for next month will be on a similar subject, making sense of macronutrients part 2 on proteins and fats. And that will be, as always, on the 3rd Tuesday of the month at noon, which will fall on September 21st. All right, and for anybody who's interested in hearing more about proteins and fats, we do have our regular monthly cooking demo on September 8th, and that topic will be Powerhouse Plant Proteins and Fats with Chef Ashley. So please, we welcome you to join us for that program on Wednesday, September 8th. And if you'd like to join any of our programs, you can go on our website, cscatlanta.org, and register there. All right, Kristin, thank you so much again for your time today. We always appreciate this, getting some great feedback in the chat. Great presentation, perfect. All right, everyone, we will see you next month.
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org. Or follow us on Facebook. We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.